order. We are Thursday, May 14th, 2020. We still have two bills left on the agenda. Do we see Senator Westrom on yet?
Not yet.
Okay, then I think we're going to go ahead and move to Senate File 92, Senator Relph. And he does have the A61 amendment. Members, if you want to pull that up, that'd be great. Senator Relph.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Did we want to move the amendment first, or should I explain?
I like to hear the amendment first.
Okay, that'll be fine.
Yeah, thank you.
In a nutshell, what we're doing here is we're trying to give the PCAs a temporary rate increase, 15%. It's to be split 80% between wages and salaries and 20% for actually COVID-related PPE and other forms of protection. What we will be doing is providing that rate increase. The fiscal note on that, it was calculated, and it's a little complex because there were several different portions to this bill. Some of that has been removed because one of them was raising the hourly cap on PCA hours from 275 hours to 310 per month. And it's my understanding that the Department of Human Services actually taken the steps to do that unilaterally. There was a fiscal note attached to that for about $1 million. I had questioned that fiscal note to begin with because these are hours that are actually already authorized. It's just the fact is that there's people able to work more, so they'll get paid for it. I'm assuming, and I haven't heard from the department yet, that they will be absorbing that within their budget. But we have pulled that out, and we've pulled that provision out of the bill. The other part of the bill is to provide payments to parents and spouses who provide actual PCA services to family members. It's a fairly small fiscal note. I believe it's around $100,000 to $150,000, and I think Dennis Albrecht may be available to comment on that, but I believe that's the amount of the fiscal note. The other fiscal note is based on the actual declaration of peacetime emergency terminating on the 30th of June, thereby allowing 60 days beyond that for the rate increase to continue and then would terminate. I know the House version actually continues that on beyond, and it creates a significant additional fiscal note of roughly $10 million per month. We kind of took this back and said, no, we're going to go with what the original fiscal note was based on, and that's what's in here. So there's roughly 75 days of increase built into this bill. Now, if in the unlikely event we can find more money to be able to allow it to continue, I certainly won't argue with that. But I felt that this was what the fiscal note was based on, and I wanted to stick with that because those assumptions at least are relatively stable. So that's basically the bill. There is, if I can find it, I believe there is an appropriation for, no, I guess we took that out. We had an appropriation for for possibility of having training, about $2 million from CARES money, and that has been taken out. So we are just going strictly with the rate increase and the parental and spousal wages. As I say, I have been working with the House on this, and we have basically come to an agreement on the language. There's two things that we have the issue with. The one that I just explained about the continuation of the program beyond the 29th of August. The other is there is language in there that would allow part of the 80% increase to be used for benefits. I felt that is just inappropriate. First of all, it's a temporary rate increase, and I think to base a benefit increase or some kind of ongoing benefit on a temporary rate or a temporary income stream just does not make sense. I know this is something that the unions have requested, but at this point in time, it seems in a temporary increase, it's inappropriate. So we have not put that in. I have been working back and forth with Representative Schultz on this, and I'm guessing we'll come down to some kind of a negotiation at the end on this. But at this point, it seems that what we want to do is we want that money to go to salary and wages, and do not want to dilute that payment. This goes directly into the pockets of the workers, and that's where we want to keep it. Otherwise, we could take it. There could be a diversion of an amount of money towards benefits that may or may not be appropriate. So if there's any questions, I certainly will stand for them.
Thank you, Senator Relph. And for the record, members, we have been operating under a quorum at this point, and we still have one. Senator Benson, would you like to move the A61 amendment, please?
So move, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Benson. On that motion, please unmute video. Wonderful. All those in favor of the A61 amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion prevails. The delete all amendment is adopted. We do have Mr. Monahan and Mr. Albrecht, who could, I'd like to have, for sure, Mr. Albrecht talk about the fiscal ramifications, and Mr. Monahan, anything else that you would like to cover that Senator Relph did not cover in the A61. Mr. Albrecht.
Madam Chair and members, one of the documents posted with your materials is a sort of summary sheet that I prepared that shows the various provisions in Senate File 92 as it was amended. That's probably the easiest way to understand it, because the provisions in it were taken out of two other bills, one a Senate bill and one a House bill,
Yeah, no problem.
both of which have fiscal notes that together are like 15 pages each. So
I just replied to wherever you sent it.
Senator Westrom, you have your mic on.
So if you look at that sheet, as Senator Relph mentioned, there's a line there for the increase in the PCA hours, but because of the action taken by the commissioner, that line has been, those provisions actually were amended out of the bill altogether.
So, Mr. Albrecht, are you working off the fiscal note?
No, Madam Chair, I'm working off of the summary sheet.
Okay.
Something like this.
That one. Okay, thank you. Do y'all see that? That's actually the last one of the email. It's SF92 summary PDF from 12/13 from Jessica Young, if anybody has problems with that. Okay, super. Thank you, Mr. Albrecht.
So the first money issue is the second line titled PCA services by parents and spouse. And that's the one that is from the House fiscal note, which is attached. And if you want, I can go through the pages where you can find these things on those individual fiscal notes. As Senator Relph indicated, the cost for that program is $149,000 in fiscal year 2021. It's a temporary program that would also be under the Senate's bill for about 75 days through June 15th through August 29th. The next two lines relate to administrative costs for that proposal. And then in the middle of the document is the PCA rate increase. And that's from Senate File 3694. It's one section out of that bill. Again, a temporary PCA rate increase. It's a 15% increase from June 15th to August 29th, and the cost for that is $24.33 million. And then a couple of lines further down are the administrative costs for that proposal, which net out to $21 million. So the overall cost of the proposal for the 2 years, 2 fiscal years, is $24.506 million. And then Senator Relph, I think, just didn't see it standing out there by itself, but there is on the A61 on line 3.16 is a $2 million appropriation from the Coronavirus Relief Fund for distribution to PCA providers to purchase PPE.
Thank you, Dennis. I had missed that. I'm sorry. I thought I just went right by it. I had originally intended it to be in, and then I didn't see it. So yes, this is strictly federal money. And that's the intention here, that it doesn't impact the general fund.
So Senator Relph, is that for the entire fiscal note or just for that appropriation?
The 2 million is basically an appropriation that would be from federal money. We'd have to seek federal approval for it.
I see. But the 24.5 is general fund.
General fund, that's correct.
I see.
So that the 2 million does not increase the general fund expenditure.
Okay.
That was the intention in the event.
Okay. So questions for Mr. Albrecht. We also have Senator Ingebrigtsen on deck.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Senator Relph, you mentioned a couple of different times here, wages and salary. Can you explain the difference there? Are we talking a monthly wage and then hourly wage here, or what's the difference, I guess?
Well, as I understand the way this is supposed to work, of course, that the money does not get directly paid by the state to the PCAs. They go through a provider agency, and then the provider agency distributes that money to them in the form of wages or salaries. And then the other 20%, of course, is used for protective equipment and other COVID-related expenses. So that's the reason, wages and salaries. I suppose there could be someone that could be there's hourly, and then I assume there could be someone who might be a salaried person in some of the other programs, but primarily it would be an hourly wage.
Thank you.
Okay. Senator Ingebrigtsen. Okay. And then we also have Senator Marty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Relph, one of the provisions you pulled out was the one on the number of hours, maximum number of hours a PCA can work. And I heard concerns from I think, ventilator dependent person who was saying he's very vulnerable to COVID, very vulnerable health conditions, and needs somebody 24/7. He says the fewer people he can have, he has a PCA willing to do the hours. And he says the fewer people he has contact with, the lower his risk is. And he was begging for that provision. What was the logic for that? How much was that provision?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Marty. First of all, it was about $1 million, but the reason that we took it out was that the department has now actually done that administratively. And so, as I understand it, it was a waiver for the amount of hours, so that is already being done. And we felt that we had originally had it in the bill because we didn't know whether there was the authority to do that, and I still have some issues. But at this point in time, in order to keep things clean and not get into some kind of an arm wrestling match over that, I chose to take it out. Now, I certainly can put it back in, and we do know what the fiscal note for that would be, I believe. Correct, Dennis?
Mr. Albrecht.
What was the question again, Senator Relph?
The fiscal note for the raising the hourly cap. We have that data, I believe.
Oh, yeah, the Senate's, the part that was in the Senate's position was about $150,000. It was the House provision that was $1 million because it was permanent in the House proposal.
Okay, so that again, that's Madam Chair, Senator Marty. I think right now that's the logic behind what we did. Depending on what the department, I mean, at this point, it sounds like they're going to absorb it. It's not very much money. Now, if it were to be a longer period of time, then that I don't know whether that would be problematic or not.
Okay, Madam Chair, thank you. I clarified. I did hear, I guess it was hearing from the department that they were going to go ahead with that, and I was confusing it with the legislation. My main point is I wanted to make sure that these folks have access to, so they can have fewer people with them for their safety. But if it's taken care of through the department, that's fine.
Yeah, Madam Chair, the advantage here is, I'm sorry, the advantage here is these people are already on the job. They're already trained. It's an immediate infusion of additional like additional personnel into the program. So I mean, it is an important part of it, and I want to make sure that we do it.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Senator, Mr. Albrecht.
I just want to make sure that members understand that Senator Relph is using the term absorbed, and that typically means that the department or the agency is going to pay for it out of their existing appropriation or some such thing like that. Under the commissioner's decisions under the executive order, the cost would be paid for out of the medical assistance program, out of the existing appropriation for the medical assistance program, but it's not absorbed in the sense that we typically use that term.
Thank you, Mr. Albrecht.
Mhm.
Okay. Senator Marty, you're good? Get your answer? Okay, super. Senator Hayden.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Relph, for bringing this bill. It's much needed. I just have a pretty quick question. I noticed that you have the effective date, or it looks like 3.8 says this section expires August 29, 2020. And I think in the House bill, they had it extended out longer. Could you just give me kind of an understanding? Is that based on when you believe the peacetime emergency will end, or is there some logic between the difference between what the House is thinking and what you're thinking?
Senator Relph.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Hayden. The original fiscal note for the House bill was based on an assumption that the peacetime emergency would end on June 30th. They extended the bill to 60 days beyond that, which would be August 29th. That was where the original approximately $26 million fiscal note came from. The House left it open-ended in terms of its actual termination in the bill. And the problem with that is, and Mr. Albrecht, please correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I believe the number was about $10 million per month, which is logical. When you take the 75 days and divide it into the 25 million, you come up with about $10 million a month to continue the program. That's the reason behind the distinction. And we chose at this point to take the route of certainty. If there's more money, I certainly would not object to seeing it put in. I would love to see this go on through the emergency, whatever it is. But I felt that trying to keep this bill within the realm of reality in terms of trying to get money from the general fund, recognizing our significant budgetary concerns. But that's the reason behind that number and how that works.
Senator Hayden.
Well, good. Well, thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Relph. Well, thank you. Thank you for that explanation. Senator Relph, is there any contingency planning if for some reason the peacetime emergency continues and the need is still there? What had you, I wasn't involved in any of the negotiations, so just if you could help me or help the committee think about what those conversations were, or will we address that?
Senator Relph.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Hayden. Basically, that was a discussion that I had with Representative Schultz when I was working on this bill, and that's the House has that provision that continues it through, I believe, January 31st of 2021. The issue there, of course, is the fiscal note, and we don't know what it would be. It could be another 10 million. It could be another 40 million, and so. We chose to come with a period certain. As I said before, I would be overjoyed if we could find another 10 or 20 million dollars laying around, but I'm concerned that could be a problem. So that was the long answer to your question. No, we did not put a contingency in. We felt that we wanted to get this through, get some money into their hands, and go forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Relph.
Senator Relph, this bill is going to be laid on the table because right now we don't even have 25 million that we could spend. But I think it was very important for us to hear this bill, and we still have negotiations with the House ongoing. So, Senator Benson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to offer an oral amendment to the language as amended. I forwarded it to Mr. Bodern and Ms. Young, and I'm sorry, Senator Relph, for not talking to you about this, but the people who watch these hearings closely notice some language, and so I'm going to try to find it in the amendment so we can all orient properly. It is
Senator
starting
Benson,
with,
or
yes,
excuse me,
Mr.
Madam Chair.
Bodern.
With your permission, I'd like to forward the email that contains your amendment so the committee can see it, and so that Ms. Young can post it on the website.
Thank you, and I had forgotten to make that request, so please do so.
So Senator Benson, why don't we wait a minute for
Great.
it to be posted and everybody can have a chance to look at it. And this will be coming from Jessica Young. In the meantime, I think I would like to go to Mr. Monahan. If there was anything that you had, Mr. Monahan, that Senator Relph did a very good job explaining the bill, but anything else that could fill it out, take up some time?
I think Senator Relph did a good job explaining what's contained in the bill and explaining why the effective dates are different than the House's effective dates. The general issue there, just to reiterate, was what kind of risk would the bill place on the general fund if it had that open-ended expiration date.
Okay. Members, it sounds like there is an email from Mr. Bodern too that was sent. Is that correct, Mr. Bodern? With this, or are we still waiting for the PDF from Ms. Young?
Madam Chair, I did send the email to members and to others on the committee listserv, or at least the committee email group. I'm not sure if she has posted it yet, so it's available to the public.
Is this the A4? No.
No.
Madam Chair, it doesn't have a number. It's just prepared by Senator Benson using text from the bill, but I think members will be able to see what it does to the bill. It's a relatively simple amendment.
Could someone share that on the screen for me? I don't believe I was probably included in the email list.
Senator Relph, I'll send it to you directly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We're having a little problems, but we'll get this. Senator Benson, is this something that okay, here we go. It's up on the screen. Can everybody see this? Okay, Senator Benson, would you like to go through your amendment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is I'm going to get back to my original language. This is to make an adjustment as requested by the managed care plans. We're striking the language line 213, starting with as needed to maintain, and then as needed to maintain managed, continuing to delete on the next line, care plans expected medical loss ratios, and then inserting the words to reflect this adjustment. And the commissioner already has the responsibility to have sound rates, and so to maintain medical loss ratios is not necessary. It's part of their responsibility, but there might be other factors other than loss ratios that have to be included in the expectation, and so the commissioner has the authority to adjust capitation rates to reflect that adjustment is sufficient language.
Is everybody following that? As needed. Okay, so 2.13 to 2.14. Senator Relph.
That's fine. I believe someone actually mentioned this to me, and I was waiting to hear some actual language. So thank you, Senator Benson. That's excellent.
Great. And just gotten word that this has now been posted to the public. I just would like to wait a few seconds to make sure that this is copacetic with everybody. And Senator Benson, would you like to make this oral amendment to the A61 amendment? It's been adopted?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Okay, so Mr. Bodern, would you like to go through the oral amendment for us and just,
Oh, thank you.
Sure, Madam Chair. So I'll just restate the way the Senator Benson's amendment is written. Is that what you're asking?
yes, please.
Okay, very good. Give me one moment to get that in front of me. So Senator Benson moves to amend the delete everything amendment as follows on page 2, line 13. Delete everything after plans. And on line 14, delete everything before the period and insert to reflect this adjustment.
Okay, any questions on this oral amendment?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Monahan?
I'm sorry, Mr. Bodden. It needs to be after the second plans.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Monahan. I should have suggested that we ask you first.
And I should have sent the language to Mr. Monahan and Mr. Bodern, but I forgot Mr. Monahan was on the meeting as well.
So Mr. Bodern, do you want to? Oh, you unmute, please. Mr. Bodern can't hear you.
Madam Chair, on the amendment is to the delete everything amendment as follows on page 2, line 13, after the second plans, delete everything. And on page 2, line 14, delete everything before the period and insert to reflect this adjustment.
Okay, all right. All right, and I think I asked Senator Relph his opinion, and everybody go to your screen. Thank you. Unmute video. All those in favor of Senator Benson's oral amendment to the A61, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion prevails. Thank you, Senator Benson.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Hey, thank you. I don't see any more hands. Any further comments, any questions for Senator Relph? Okay, Senator Relph, closing comments, please. Actually, Senator Relph, as you know, we are just going to be laying this over. So
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just thank you for hearing this bill. I appreciate the opportunity to bring this issue before the committee. I think it's an important one. The PCAs are really underpaid, and they're on the front lines here for the people with disabilities. And so I think this is something that if we can in some way in the next couple of days find some way to find some money somewhere, I certainly would appreciate it, and I know they would as well. So thank you all very much for listening, and have a great day.
thank you, Senator Relph. With that, Senate File 92 is laid on the table. Thank you, Senator Relph. Okay, members, we have Senator Westrom's Senate File 4495, the Housing Assistant Bill. And we do have one amendment that was sent to you. I believe it was the A12. And that should have been just recently sent to you. And we have Senator Westrom online, is that right?
Yes, sir. Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Westrom.
Madam Chair, I would move 4495 to be passed and placed on the general orders.
Okay, Senator Westrom moves Senate File 4495. You do have one amendment though, right?
Let's move that to Madam Chair, and I'll move the A12 amendment.
Okay, Senator Westrom, can you explain the A12 amendment, please?
Yeah, Madam Chair, and I'm going to ask staff to jump in here. This language will essentially modify the expenditure out of here, similar to what we've done with other bills, to direct it to be coming from the CARES dollars, from the federal money, if it would meet those criteria to be used for COVID-19 response. I'd ask staff to just jump in and confirm that, or if there's something I missed.
Absolutely.
But that's-
Mr. Mueller and Mr. Knopf here. Who would like to start?
I'm here, Mr. Knopf.
Hi, Mr. Knopf.
Hi. Yeah, this is very similar to the agricultural finance bill, where you had some COVID-related expenditures. And then if you look at paragraph K, the new paragraph K, no money in the section may be spent until Commissioner of MMB determines that the appropriation of the section are eligible uses of the coronavirus relief account. So it's very similar. The only thing I would ask Senator Westrom, can you as part of this, just incorporate on 1.8, changing the word are to is? I think I got the wrong form of the verb there.
Mr. Knopf, that will take quite a bit of debate, so I'm not sure if that'd be fine, Mr. Knopf.
So Mr. Knopf, are you saying?
I'll incorporate that in my A12 as a friendly or as an oral amendment.
Wonderful. Any questions, any comments on the A12 amendment? Okay, I didn't see any signs. Senator Westrom would like to make an oral amendment to the A12 amendment on page line 8. Change R to
Is. R to is.
Okay, so it would read, budget determines that the appropriation in this section is an eligible use of the coronavirus.
Yes.
All those in favor of the amended A12 motion, please unmute video. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Okay, amendment is adopted. Senator Westrom.
Aye.
Ma-
Madam
Thank
Chair,
you.
I vote aye too. It just takes a while to get all these buttons undone. So give us a little more time, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
We,
Senator
we just thought you were voting twice, Representative Senator Nelson and Champion. So, Madam Chair, members, this bill in front of us is a bill that passed out of the Ag, Rural Development and Housing Finance Division. In essence, it does a few things dealing with assistance for homeowners and renters at $30 million level to help those that have been affected by COVID-19, either through loss of employment by at least 15%, or a loss of wages to their family because of the pandemic and the COVID-19, or have suffered from the illness themselves. And so that $30 million would be up to 90 days of assistance for partial or full rent payment, reimbursements, or utilities, or expenses that those tenants or homeowners, Madam Chair, also homeowners, they're behind a little on their mortgage or have had, because of COVID-19, they would be eligible for those expenses and assistance for amounts due after April or March 1st. And so that number also reflects an agreement we had with the House back on April 6th. But then, for inexplainable reasons, the governor's office walked away from, and Representative Hausman, and we were not able to get it through the legislature on when we came back after Easter, which would have been a far preferred if we could have gotten it done that or and been of great help to homeowners struggling with their mortgages, or maybe some utility expenses, or tenants that also would be helped under this bill. Secondly, the bill would also put a moratorium on evictions for 90 days in two parts. One, a 60-day moratorium for the evictions, and then the governor would get another 30-day extension of an eviction moratorium, taking it out until the later part of June, and that would be also part of this bill. And Madam Chair, as I mentioned before, those that would be affected or able to apply for this assistance would have to just demonstrate their that they've been affected through a job reduction or job loss because of COVID-19, or have been become ill because of the virus as well. And this would help them with some of those immediate expenditures up to 90 days. So it's important to get this through. There are other discussions that are continuing. Hopefully we can come to an agreement, but this would be very important to have on the Senate floor so we can wrap things up on this important matter if we can come to a final resolution and agreement on this language that wants to have agreement. So with that, Madam Chair, I would just urge us to pass it out to the Senate floor, and it would be ready for discussion and to move on in these last few days. Madam Chair, I just ask if Greg or Mr. Mueller have any key things that I've omitted in my review of it, but I've tried to keep it short and sweet.
Thank you, Senator Westrom. Mr. Knopf or Mr. Mueller? Right. There we
The
go.
only thing that I would, Madam Chair, the only thing that I would add is if you look at the dates in section 1, it's 60 days after March 24th. That's when the governor's eviction order went into effect. So this basically, it's the same time period, except that it puts the 60 days on and then allows the commissioner to extend it for 30 days, or the governor, excuse me. But it says that that's the last extension. The legislature would have to act again to extend it beyond that. And it also provides in section 3 an assistance fraud provision that just clarifies that if you intend to defraud and applying for these grants, that you're guilty of an attempt to commit theft of public funds and should be sentenced accordingly. And also, I also want to point out in the appropriation, we're using an existing program at Housing Finance, the Homeless Prevention and Assistance Program. And what it does, by doing that, we can get the dollars out quickly to the people in need. And these are the people that are used to working with the same people we're talking about here. Although they only go up on the current program, it's up to 200% of poverty. This grant program would be people could be eligible up to 300%. I wanted to make sure we clarify that beyond what Senator Westrom had. But that's all I have for now, unless there are questions.
Thank you, Mr. Knopf. And Mr. Mueller, is there anything that you would like to add before we go to Senator Hayden, who took his hand down? No? Okay. Senator Hayden, did you have a question? You took your hand down. You all good? Okay.
Second, hold on. Let me see if I can
Thank you.
get myself together here. Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Westrom, thank you for bringing the bill. I know that this is probably headed towards a negotiation, and you said that the House and the governor kind of walked away from what you thought was an agreement. Without getting into the details of that, I don't want you to speak for the governor or the House. Essentially, how far away are we from this? I've always heard that the governor was on the 100 million he thought was going to be appropriate for this. Looks like you've come in with 30 million. So one, is that accurate? And secondly, is there significant language differences that the House and the governor also want?
Senator Westrom?
Madam Chair, Senator Hayden, at the time we were negotiating this bill and what you see in front of you, essentially the governor had proposed $10 million. The House had come out at $100 million, and the Senate had offered 25 million at one point, and the House came back with a lot of language with a 2 30-day extensions off the original 60 days. So it'd be a 120-day eviction moratorium instead of the 90-day moratorium. The Senate had made 2 changes to the offer that the commissioner and the House representatives, Representative Hausman, had worked through and made an offer back to us. The Senate agreed to 30 million and to do one of the 30-day extensions with the idea we would come back and relook at this if this continues on into the summer. So they were at $50 million. We were at 25. We agreed on 30 and all their language except for 30-day extensions instead of the second, and then instead of the 2 30-day extensions. So we were very, very close, and then we did have agreement, and then things fell apart. And I was very optimistic we could have done this right after we came back from Easter recess. But to answer your question, that's how close we are. We were, and I think, of course, time has moved on. Will continue to be discussions on this, but $100 million is still where the House came out. And the governor does not allow an eviction moratorium on some of the worst criminal type activity. Evictions House, I understand it has expanded it to not allow eviction on anybody, even criminals. And so they maybe went a little further away from where the governor even was, or the Senate was, the property. And
Yeah, I was going to ask, Madam Chair, I'm getting about half of what Senator Westron's saying.
Oh, you are?
Once in a while it gets good, and then it got really bad all of a sudden. So I'm not
Oh,
sure.
I'm sorry.
If your head needs to be in a certain spot or what. But, yeah.
You're not hearing me, or is it cutting in and out, Madam Chair?
Cutting in and out and very garbly. This sounds a little better, actually.
I'm in my office. I'm plugged into the wall. I thought I had it all fixed, but I will.
This is better.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, roll with it.
Senator Hayden, we're not that far off. The House was at 50 million. We were at 30 million in the, or 25 million. We had agreed on 30 million and one 30-day extension on the eviction moratorium, as opposed to the House had come back with wanting 2 30-day extensions for the governor. So in essence, that's how close we were. That's what we had agreed upon, taking most of the House language otherwise. I don't know if that answers your questions, but I'll.
Yeah, I think that's good enough for now. I think we're going to keep moving, and hopefully you guys keep negotiating. I just wanted to get a sense of where we were. Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Westrom.
Thank you, Senator Hayden. Thank you. Mr. Nelman, this money is definitely eligible. I know the A12 says the commissioner determines the appropriation is eligible, but in the guidance that you've received from the National Treasury, this would be eligible for the CRF, right?
Madam Chair, as Treasury has said on a number of occasions, I think you can make the case. So there is no, I don't see any restrictions that would prevent it. So I think you can make the case.
Okay, super. Senator Westrom, if there's no further questions, I'll let you have your closing comments.
Madam Chair, real briefly, to your last question, it does seem like these types of assistance for homeowners and tenants, as well as housing providers across the state, are meet the criteria and would be eligible for these federal funds. So it's really on that front. Expenditure out of the CARES Act. Since we had originally negotiated this money was coming out of the state general fund. And of course, that lost $4 billion in the 4 weeks that we waited to get this and got the new forecast. So these federal funds would be very helpful and a positive direction to spend in this assistance. The sooner we can get out, the sooner we stop any.
Great, thank you very much. Senator Hayden, did you get that? That was a little garbly, but we pretty much got it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I know, it's funny. It's funny. All right. I'm sorry, lost that. Senator Westrom, would you like to move your amended bill, please?
Madam Chair, I would move Senate File 4495 as amended to be passed and placed on the general orders.
Thank you. On that motion, please unmute and video.
7.
Missing a couple, Senator Kippmeyer, Senator Franzen, if they're available. There we go. Okay, super. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion prevails. Thank you very much, Senator Westrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members.
And with that, we are done. We finished our work for today. We have a hearing tomorrow morning at 8:30. And frankly, I don't know what's on the docket yet. My apologies. But we'll get that to you as soon as possible. So thank you very much, members. And Senator Benson, we'll see you in HHS shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Meeting is adjourned.